Thanks for tuning in again. We're here in the hive, in the brood box. We've taken the top box off and we're having a look at what's going on. We're here just past the midway point of winter and these bees think it's spring. There's a lot of bees in the hive. We actually need to do what we call our spring management, where we're getting in here and relieving congestion in the brood box. Now, today what we're going to do is just have a look and see what's going on, check that the queen's laying. It's pretty obvious she is because there's a lot of bees in this hive, but if you're here in the southern hemisphere in Australia and you're down south a bit, then your first brood inspections will be just checking you have a laying queen. So that's what we're having a look at today. We've chosen this hive because it's undercover, bit of a rainy day, not the right day for beekeeping usually because bees get grumpy when it's grey and rainy and you're taking their hive apart, and I guess you wouldn't blame them. But we'll see how they go. So first of all we're going to look at which frame to pull out. So I'm choosing one that'll come out easy. I might choose this edge one here. Adding a little smoke like this gets the bees out of the way. We could even add some down between the frames because the first one, it can be a bit congested and hard to actually get the frame out without bothering and rolling the bees between the frames. So I'm just going sideways first just to loosen it up and then using the hook on the end like this just to pry that frame out nice and gentle. If you've got questions, put them in the comments and we'll answer them live. And here we go, rolling up nice and slowly like this. Well, look at that, we've got some nice honey there, so that's good. It's good to see. That means the spring flow is on already. Look at that, yum yum. You could take that and alleviate some of the pressure of congestion in the brood box just by cutting that out like we did last week. If you missed that, you simply shake off the bees, brush the last ones away, cut out the comb and then move the frame back towards the center. Great thing to be doing to a couple of your frames in the springtime to alleviate that primary trigger of swarming. Any questions?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Look, I'm not sure if we've got Facebook, so we are on YouTube, so if you've posted a few questions, maybe repost them. And also there were a couple on YouTube which I've now lost, so welcome back and please ask those questions again. So a question coming in from Insta, are ants in the hive an issue?
No, the bees will keep ants away, so they're only really bothersome to us who don't like seeing ants when we pull off the covers and things. So it's really a cosmetic issue, but if that's bothering you, then we do have these ant guards here, and what you'll need to do in order to get the ants away from making their homes under the roof or behind the inner cover is make sure you're pulling off those windows, take off the roof, take off this little strip. They can often hide behind it there, and just brush all the ants away. Remove foliage from around the hive so it's not touching it, and create some barrier. You can do it yourself just by putting the legs in some tubs of water, or you can use our ant guards here by putting oil or grease in the bottom here, and that'll work as an ant barrier. You need to do that a couple of times in order to get rid of the ants, and the problem will go away till next time they decide that your hive is a good spot to nest. Okay, cinnamon is another thing people use. They throw a bit of cinnamon powder behind the windows here. It does deter the ants as well, so that's a quick little hack you can use. Okay, we've got more honey here, so we've got a lot of honey in this hive, which is good. And hoping they'll start storing some up the top soon. Now, most beekeeping movements in the brood box here are nice and calm, but I accidentally slipped then, and the bees started getting a little bit more antsy and giving me some warnings. So I need to top up my smoker, give them a little more smoke, and then okay, we've got pine cone in, why not? And there's just some mulch from around the place. Use whatever you've got. Some straw, some leaves, pine needles, bark from trees can be good. And that way you'll be able to keep your smoker going. Be mindful that it's hot. Wear your gloves if you're new to beekeeping, and try not to burn yourself on the actual smoker edge. So you can use your hive tool to close it like that when it's all hot, and that'll keep it going. Don't be afraid to give it some good puffs to really fire it up again, because what you want is nice billows of cool smoke coming out like that. And here it is, starting to get better. And the idea is just to blow a bit of smoke in the hive, calm them down a little bit, make it a bit easier to do your brood inspections. Okay, we'll let that keep going, and the waft of smoke as the bees are returning will just calm them down as they come in as well. So let's have a look at this next frame, see what's going on it. It feels heavy. Looks like we've got a lot of honey on it too. There we go. A lot of honey on this side. Any honey on any brood? No brood yet. All honey. A little bit of pollen. So we could actually do some spring management and cut out some of the comb. However, they haven't started filling the flow frames yet. So I'm going to leave the honey till they get started on the flow frames and start filling them up. If I start chopping all the comb out down here, they'll be slower to actually build on the flow frames. Beautiful. Always keeping a little eye out for the queen. It's a fun thing to do. I'm usually too busy talking to really focus in on it. There we go, can't see her there. I can't see her there, but there's a lot of nice honey, which is a really good sign that spring's started here. Any more questions?
Yes, Cedar. One question on Insta, wondering what type of bees are these?
So these are a bit of a mix. You'd probably say they're Italian bees. So there's all sorts of breeds if you go to a bee breeder, and Italians are ones that is probably the most common one, but you also get Caucasians, which are actually a dark bee, Carnolians, all sorts of different breeds, and the breeders will have their reasons why they think theirs are the best. But in reality, what you need is just a nice, gentle genetics and productive, and hopefully hygienic as well. Keep the hive nice and clean and free of disease. So those are the things you can ask for if you're buying some bees from a breeder. Okay, so let's have a look at the next hives. We still haven't seen any brood yet, but let's just lever these frames apart and have a look at what's going on the next one. All right, so we're coming up like this. We have some brood, so that is good. And what we have here is drone brood. See how it's sticking out like, they say bullet shape. It's sticking out like that compared to the workers over here. I'm going to get my bee brush and get some of these bees off so you can have a really good look. First of all, I'm just going to have a little look for the queen in case she's on here. And being careful not to tip it over too far, because these frames are simply naturally drawn by the bees, just a wooden frame with a piece of strip up the top, so there's no wire foundation or anything like that here. Wow, a lot of bees in this hive, which is great. Okay. The main way you pick up the queen is by her movement. Well, I find that. You see her moving a bit different to the other bees, long strides. But you do have to focus in to find her. It's like a game of Where's Wally or Where's Waldo, where you're trying to find the one different bee amongst 30,000 bees. All right. To get bees off a frame, a good shake is what's required, like this. And that way you can have a good look at what's going on here. So that's the drone brood, the male bees, and this is the worker brood, the female workers. See how they're quite different? And this is honey. So there's a really good illustration of what goes on in a hive. Down the cells here, give us a thumbs up if you can see grubs down the cells just above my finger there. So that's the caterpillar stage, the grub stage before they have actually cocooned. And now they've spun a silk cocoon around themselves and they're going through their metamorphosis. This bee here is a baby bee. It's just emerged out of its cell and it's taking its first steps in the hive. You can see by it's a bit lighter colour, a bit smaller, it's all fluffy, and now it's diving down the cell head first to start the process of cleaning. Right underneath it is another one just emerging there. You can see the capping's perforated. In another 20 minutes it'll probably be coming out. Here's another one here. So there's a worker bee just chewing its way out, and soon it'll emerge into the hive as a fluffy little baby bee ready to start the chores of the hive. Very cool. So we've got a lot of emerging bees, which is fantastic. And same on the other side, emerging bees and drones, workers. So there's another one emerging and another one there. Beautiful. Any more questions?
Yes, Ida, the red raccoon is asking, what's the purpose of your spring management? Can you explain why you're doing it?
So the main purpose of the spring management is to relieve congestion in the brood box. Last week we showed you how to just simply cut out some comb and put the frames back in, and what that does is it provides some brand new real estate for the bees to build comb and the queen to lay her eggs. So if there's not enough room for the queen to lay her eggs, the hive will start preparing to swarm. And that means half of your bees fly off, and because we can't sort of hang around all day waiting to catch the swarm, sometimes they go really high in the trees as well. You're better off getting ahead of the curve and doing your spring management. And taking splits is my favourite way because that really reduces congestion in the brood box. But if you don't want to take splits, then you can simply make more room by either adding more brood boxes or more supers, or just cycling out some of the combs for fresh new ones. Or if you've got naturally drawn comb like we have here, you can simply cut it out and put it straight back in, which is wonderful because you don't have to go through that phase of getting into the workshop and rewiring it and all of that like I used to. Okay, here we go. This hive's looking really good. Now we've got plenty of room to move in the hive because we've used our shelf brackets there as a nice frame rest. A tip with that is rest them on the high points. That makes it easier, and you can fit 3 frames there. Gives you plenty of room to just go sideways. So nice little double of the double use of that harvesting shelf bracket. So now all we're going to do is move this frame acrossways once we've had a little look at that. A lot of bees on there, which is great. Bit of honey and plenty of brood. It's great when you see the brood really hard packed like that in the frame, because it means all of these cells are going to be baby bees quite soon. They spend 11 days in their cocoon phase, these workers, so in the next 11 days all of them will be new bees in the hive. It's great. Any questions?
Yes, so that you mentioned before that the bees were Italian, and one of the questions is, do you get Italian bees in Australia or do you get them in Italy?
So this is the European honeybee that humans have dragged all around the world wherever they have gone because they're such extreme pollinators. So a hive like this could pollinate 50 million flowers in a day, or actually even more if you start doing the maths. So it's incredible, and there's no other thing or animal on the planet that can do that for us. So they've become a really integral part of our supply chain, and we're very in trouble if we don't have enough honeybees, because then you don't get almonds, you don't get all sorts of foods. And if you're not too worried about that, then think about chocolate, think about coffee, think about wine. And now people are getting upset. We need the bees. So it's really important to keep these bees part of our food chain, making getting the pollination going on all of those crops that need it. So if you're in Europe, this would be the native bee, but here it's not. It's imported species. Of course, there's lots of native bees as well in Australia, and some of them do a really important job of pollinating as well. So we need both the European honeybee and also all of our native bee species as well. There's about 20,000 different native species of bee in the world. And we also promote looking after them, creating habitat, which is a really important thing to keep those bees alive. Creating habitat in your backyard can just help by creating stepping stones. Their radius is often really short where they fly, so you can picture it like stepping stones across the urban landscape, reconnecting one wild space to another. And you might just save a species from the brink of extinction simply by creating habitat in your yard. Okay. This is looking really good. We'll just keep looking through some of the frames and answering questions.
Right. Cedar, we've got the beekeeper tuning in from Canada today, and just wondering how long does it take to harvest? And I'm not sure if you're talking about the whole hive or maybe just one of the frames.
Okay, so it does vary a lot, but basically we designed this system to make it really easy and gentle for the bees, and I'm happy to say it works very well. Now, if you've missed it, we've done countless live harvests, and you can watch in real time how long it takes to harvest the frame. So basically you're turning a handle at the top here, and the honey simply draining out into your jar. Next week we'll show you that live. On a warm sunny day, the quickest you see it is all the honey's drained out in 10 minutes, and the slowest you see it is hours on a really cold day. But you should allow probably 45 minutes for a normal harvest. Now the bees keep it warm for their brood nest, so if you've got a single super on top of a brood nest, the honey is warm and you'll find that it'll flow really quite nicely. If you're in a cold time of year and you've got a couple of supers, you might find it's quite cold at the top and it'll come out very slow, but it still comes out, and you can simply just make sure you've covered up the honey from the bees, and you can come back and your jar will be nice and full in an hour or two's time. Okay.
So when you're doing it, we've just got a question coming down. If you see one, could you point out if we've got some queen brood cells to show the difference?
Queen cells, okay, let's have a look for queen cells. We're going to have to start shaking the bees off the frames to have a really good look. This frame is one that we've actually shown on live a bunch of times. It's where the comb guard wasn't glued in. It's fallen down, doesn't matter, it's part of the frame now. And it's kind of sitting diagonally, and the bees have just built around it. But we might put this frame on the edge when we put it back together, so we can suckle that out and fix that up. Once all the brood has emerged, you can see the brood nicely here. Once all that brood has emerged from their cells, we can then take this frame away. Did I answer that question?
Yeah, I think we're looking for some queen cells, but I don't think you've come across any yet.
Okay. let's just shake these bees into the hive like that and have a look to see if we've got any queen cells on this frame. Not seeing any, but it is typical in spring for them to start making swarm cells where they're planning for the hive to swarm. Here we've got grubs down the cells. If we have a look in the right light, we'll see eggs, and you've got cap brood there and honey over here, but no sign of a queen cell on this frame. Queen cells hang down a bit like a peanut shell coming out of the comb. Because the queen's a lot longer, she won't actually fit down a standard sized cell. But let's have a look on the next frame for a queen cell.
Got a couple of people, Brett saying, and Brett, you asked a question before and I think we lost it when we lost our live stream. He's getting a bit nervous about that super box, I think, sitting on the rail.
Yeah, bump.
Don't knock it.
It's quite stable there. We'll pull it back in, that's better, isn't it? Balanced. Okay. Adding a little smoke, keeping the bees calm on this grey rainy day. They're being friendly, which is nice, but sometimes on a grey rainy day they're not friendly, which is why we suggest doing your brood inspections on a nice warm sunny day. The bees have got other things to do. A lot of them are out foraging and they're generally happy. Bees can be moody. It's been proven that they do get depressed, and if they've got nothing to do and it's rainy for a while, they can be a bit grumpy.
Sort of like us a bit,
Yeah, that's right. Beautiful, lots of brood there on this side. And what have we got around here? Just a lot of bees. So the question was looking for queen cells. So looking for queen cells, some beekeepers will go in and start knocking them off while they're doing spring management. I don't tend to do that. I just leave it up to the bees. They know what they're doing, and I tend to just take splits to reduce the likelihood of swarming. Look at that, nice. No queen cells, but a lot of brood. Look at that, all of those cells will be baby bees in the next week or so. So this hive's going to explode in numbers if you count all of those cells. There's a lot of them. That's beautiful when you see just brood like that all across the frame. It's very nice. Keep the questions coming in.
Yes, they read another question from them saying one of the hives is really aggressive when they open it to inspect. Have you got any suggestions for it?
Okay, so if you find your hives aggressive and that's causing trouble or it's uncomfortable for you and those around, or pets or anything like that, then what you'll need to do is get in there, find the queen and actually take it away. And a day later you'll put a new queen in. Ideally you've purchased one from a queen breeder that has some known genetics, nice and gentle, and if that queen takes, then a month later you'll have a completely different temperament, because all of these worker bees and guard bees would have died out and there's a whole new replacement of bees. So the queen.
Mrs. Kay's asking, what do you do when your brood box is full of honey? Do you have to add another box to it?
So when the brood box is full of honey, let's say you've started your hive and you've got a whole lot of honey down here and it's springtime and you haven't put the top box on, then you get what's called honey bound, where there's not enough room for the queen to lay, and that'll be a trigger for swarming. So if you've got that scenario, best idea, as you say, to add your honey super on top, or you could go and add another honey super on top of that if this was full, or you could just harvest this honey and let the bees move the honey upstairs, or you could get in like we did last week, if you missed that video, and cut out some of the comb and then the bees will draw some new comb quite quickly, and that's fresh real estate for the queen to lay her eggs, and that will reduce the swarming. Great things to do in springtime or as spring approaches if you're here in Australia where spring starts quite early as far as the bees are concerned. Okay.
Mika's question is, if they've got a weak hive and they're supplementing feeding it with sugar water, should they also use pollen paddies? There was a late split. It was a late split from last year.
Okay, late split from last year. It really depends on the area, so get some local bee knowledge. Now, here we don't tend to need to feed at all really because there's always something, but if you're in an area where there is a really long break without flowers, a cold winter, then as you say, feeding sugar water is really important. That will keep them alive. And pollen paddies is something that some beekeepers do and others don't, but basically that will help too because pollen is their protein, nectar or sugar water is their carbohydrate, and that's what they need to be able to live. So you could feed pollen paddies as well. Get some local advice on that. We don't tend to do it around here. Okay, let's just have a look here. Now, my sister, the bee spy's just rocked up. She spends her days out with the flowers and the bees, getting incredible footage. She's also keeping about 40 hives right outside her door, and there's another 40 of mine, so there's like 80 hives down in the paddock where she lives, and she spends her days with the bees. Now look at that, a lot of bees there. And she might just step in and get some nice macro shots.
Oh, I don't have my macro lens on, but I do have a little bit of macro action on this one.
Okay.
I don't have the super special one.
Okay, she doesn't have the macro lens today, but sometimes she gets some amazing macro footage live as well.
They're fairly relaxed given the rainy weather.
They are, they're being well behaved. I had to talk to them this morning and I said, behave yourself. And here they are.
You can see this one, she's fanning with a Nasonov gland.
Yeah, check that out.
You can see at the back there's that little strip of golden, and she's sort of tilting the very tip of her abdomen down and then fanning her wings, and that's a scent gland. What?
Oh,
What's she doing?
messed it up. Wanted to get closer. Okay.
Let's see, she's this one here.
Can you pull it in a little bit?
If you want me to take a photo, but not on the macro setting, no.
Okay.
You can see there,
Mm.
the back of her abdomen.
So that's called the Nasonov gland. They use it to fan a scent out to say this is where the hive is. So when you've done something disruptive like this, the bees are going, hang on a minute, I just want to let everyone know where the hive is. And they're fanning that Nasonov gland to let the other returning bees know that hive's here, hive's here. Okay. Let's have a look. There's a lot of bees on the frame. This hive's going to absolutely boom over the next few weeks. All right. Any more questions coming in?
Yes, Cedar. RDM's asking, what can I do if my bees have filled their brood box with honey, but haven't moved any of it or putting anything into the super that she's got on the hive?
Okay. The main thing you can do is patience. It really requires a strong colony and that coinciding with a good nectar flow for them to get enough bees to really work the super and store honey up there. However, if you get a little bit impatient, here's a trick you can do just to get a bit of action. You take some of the wax right off the top of the brood frames. If they are ready to start storing honey in the super, they're probably building wax up here as well. So you go and get wax off the top of the brood frames, then you simply get your flow frame and press it into it. So if this was the flow frame and you're pressing it in, you won't damage the flow frame. Then put that in the window side and you can enjoy the bees recycling that wax. A lot of beekeepers have told me bees don't recycle wax, but you can watch it firsthand, them recycling that wax, covering the cells with wax, joining all the parts together, and that'll just get them going a little bit quicker. It doesn't make any difference whether it's got honey in it or not, just the wax is what they're after to recycle and start coating the frame with. So that's a way you can speed up the process a little bit.
Heather's asking, Cedar, what are you putting in the smoker? They're saying that whenever they do inspection, the smoker never lasts that long. So it's probably what fuel you've got going on in the smoker.
Well, we topped it up. There was just a bit of rubble from the mulch under the trees here, so it had sticks in there as well, pine cones, all sorts of things. And yeah, pine needles burn very quickly, so it's not a bad idea to add something that's got a bit more substance to it, like maybe the bark off a tree or some pine cones or some wood chip or something like that, just to keep it going a bit longer. Otherwise you'll be topping up with your pine needles or hay really quickly. But whatever you've got, I say, and just make sure you have some on hand to top it up when it's starting to go out.
Here's a bee emerging.
Oh, here we go.
Got a bee being born.
There you go. Beautiful. Look at that.
It's about to pop out. Oh, look at it.
There it is, just coming out there.
Light and fluffy. I call them, I said they have bed hair.
Bed hair.
Yeah. Because they're all their furs kind of flat. When
There
they
you
come
go.
out of the cell, and then they kind of groom themselves and they get fluffier and fluffier as they start working their chores, which is to clean the hive.
That's my sister Mira, the bee spy.
There she goes, cleaning her first cell. Born and at it.
There we go. She's like, this is a strange world here with these big mammals looking at me, but anyway, I'll get to work.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
Smaller and a bit lighter than the other bees.
No.
Harold's asking, is 19% moisture too much to store honey, or should I try to dry it out more?
Okay, so it all depends on, there's two things there. There's moisture content and then there's also colony forming units. So you could have honey just over 20% and it not ferment. And that's simply because those yeasts, there's not the right yeasts present to start the fermentation process. So you can often have honey that is around that 20% range and it will store for a very long time. So it's probably okay. Why don't you do some tests and see if you find that if you find you've got very liquid honey and it's really right up above that 20% range, then just keep it in the fridge or consume it or turn it into mead, and that way you won't waste that honey. You don't want jars of honey fermented on the shelf. But yeah, there's plenty you can do if you've accidentally harvested a bit early. But I would say 19%, I would hazard a guess that it will last. Beekeepers selling commercially will try and get it more like 18% to make sure commercially it's not going to ferment in people's pantries.
Right. Now here's a good one from James. James is wanting to talk about queen genetics. Do you think marking a queen with a dot on its back mimics the look of a varroa mite on a queen's back, making bees less likely to take care of mites in their genetics?
I don't think so. I think a dot on the queen's back is very different to the look of a varroa mite, which is more like it's like a tick the size of a rabbit if it was on us. And it's usually on the under side as well, although it can be on the top. So I haven't got a lot of experience. I'm pretty sure that marking queens has nothing to do with the ability for a queen to look after its hive with varroa, or sorry, the hive to look after themselves and manage varroa. There are genetics in the world, and people are really starting to experiment with that. We're breeding for Varroa resistant strains, and it'd be worthy looking into people that are doing that if you're interested in that.
See, there was condensation in the hive an issue. Sel was wondering, they can see some on their window, but the bees seem really happy. So
It's not an issue, it's normal, and you do get a slight less insulating area here where around the edge of the window, but really in winter, if you've got humidity and you've got a cold surface, then condensation will collect on it. And the difference between a flow hive and a conventional hive is you can see it in the flow hive. And it's not really an issue. In fact, in those winter areas, many beekeepers will argue that it's important to have condensation because the bees can use it as a water source. They can use the condensation on the walls of the hive. Where you don't want a lot of condensation is on the roof or the underside of the inner cover, because you don't want water dripping onto the bees. If it's very cold, you live in a cold, snowy area and there's water dripping onto the bees, then that could actually kill bees. So in those really cold areas over winter, people usually insulate the inner cover by putting some styrofoam or any kind of insulation in the roof cavity, meaning you're less likely to get condensation on the underside of the inner cover. But down the walls of the hive, not an issue. In areas where it's not that cold, not an issue at all either. So quite normal.
Right, that might help with the question from Montana saying, will this beehive work in the UK? Does the weather affect it?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Now, for some reason, from the beginning of time with our flow hive in 2015, people in the UK have been saying it won't work here. And my dad went over there and that was to do a tour, and people would come up to him and say it won't work here, and then they'd storm off again. And he ended up putting a sign saying it does work here, and then the conversations started to change. But have a look around, you've got plenty of beekeepers in the UK keeping flow hives and having great success. Have a look at Jamie Oliver, have a look at some of our Instagram and all of that. We've got plenty of people in the UK keeping bees, having great success with flow hives. So don't be put off by what some of the beekeepers are saying.
Fantastic. Jose, you're asking about, you've got some videos of pollinators and bees. Send it to info@honeyflow.com and they'll get it sorted for you. Now, where are we? Okay. If the queen bee dies, how long will the rest of the bees stay around the hive, or is there a chance they all leave the hive?
So if the queen bee dies, which happens reasonably often, then the hive will usually create another queen. Now they can only do that if there's eggs that they can then feed royal jelly for its entire 11 days gestation in order to turn it into a queen. As soon as they feed that young larvae pollen proteins through epigenetics, it'll turn into a worker bee. So usually they get it together, but sometimes they don't. And what we call that is a queenless hive. And if they don't get it together to raise a queen, they've got no eggs to do so, then they simply just slowly die out over the next few months, and the numbers of bees get less and less. Robber bees come in and steal the rest of the honey, and what you've got is a dead out, which should be removed from the apiary as soon as you notice that. Now, ideally you catch it earlier, you notice that the numbers are dropping, you get in there and you see that there's no presence of brood, and you introduce either a queen that perhaps you've purchased, or you can introduce a frame from another hive that has eggs on it and give them a go at raising a queen. And that works most of the time, but sometimes you get what's called hopelessly queenless, where you can't get them to create another queen, and you're usually better off if there's no pest or disease issues, merging that colony with another one just to save the remaining bees. There's interesting techniques on how to do that. You can put the box on top of another hive with a sheet of newspaper in between, and the bees will slowly chew their way through the newspaper and get used to the pheromones of that new hive, and they're less likely to fight each other. Okay, I'm going to add a bit more smoke, so the tone of the hive has changed. If I come in here, you can hear that. Give us a thumbs up if you can hear that sound. So after a while you get used to the sound of the bees and know when it's time to add a bit more smoke to the hive to calm them down. Now adding smoke temporarily winds them up a bit. You can hear that now. But then it has a calming effect. So we're going to start putting the hive back together. They've been very well behaved on this grey rainy day, and we'll answer a few more questions as we do that. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay.
There was some ripper questions today, Cedar. In fact, we just had a question from Brett that someone else has answered. Brett said, I'm new here. Are you Cedar or Stu?
Haha, I'm Cedar. My father's Stuart, and we spent a decade inventing the flow hive, and it's now been in the wild in 130 something different countries for 8 years, and yeah, it's going great, and it's amazing to have a community all around the world, and it's so great to see people answering questions that other people are asking, and that community effect of people that have gained experience in beekeeping helping the new people. It's just great. So if you've got answers to other people's questions, don't be shy, chime in and help everybody learn in this amazing pursuit of beekeeping.
Cedar, Mark wants to know, and if you watched last week's one, you would have actually seen this one, Mark. Can you eat the dark wax from the outer brood frame and recycle it on the frame and brood box?
Yes, you can, and it's an experience. I think you should try eating that and seeing what it's like. It's just got a different texture because of the silk cocoons that build up after the bees have been using it for their brood. So it's almost a bit crunchy, but the honey will be the same. And you'll find sections with pollen as well, or bee bread, which is an experience in itself. It's quite strong, and it's because the bees, it's not like the pollen you buy from a shop where they've knocked it off with a bee brush at the entrance. It's actually fermented pollen topped with a bit of honey in their special sauce, and it ferments away, so it's got quite a strong flavour. So I'm going to move these frames across now, and I'm trying to keep them in a similar order except that frame that I wanted to cycle out. So I'm going to grab that frame that had the wonky comb guide. I'm going to put it on the edge. Next time we're in here, which will be soon doing our spring management, we will move that. We'll take that frame out and replace it with one with a better comb guide. Okay, so these just went across like this, and I'm going to add a little bit of smoke to the end bars so I don't squash bees as I push them together like that. And we're just moving them all across and trying to make sure there's no comb touching comb, because if you get comb that's squishing into another comb because you've muddled the frames around, there's a bit that's sticking out here and a bit that's sticking out there, then what happens is the bees can't service that area. If you've got hive beetles like we do around here, then they will take an opportunity while the bees can't hassle them to lay in that area, and it can cause a slime out, it's called, where you get too many maggots and the bees usually abscond. Okay. Those hive beetle maggots are annoying. A strong colony like this usually can keep on top of it. However, if you press a whole lot of combs together, they still may not be able to. So this one goes there. Actually, this is the one we want to cycle out. So let's pick up this one here, put it back in to give ourselves some room. A quick look at that. There we go. And this one had the wonky comb guide, you can see pointing down here. But it's got a lot of brood on it, so we need to move that to the edge of the hive, because they don't usually keep brood on the edge. And next time, if it's all honey, we can take that one out. So it looks fine now, even though it's a different order, to move this one across. I'm just being mindful that we don't have comb touching comb. Actually, there's a little bit here, so this is a really good example of what I'm talking about. There is some honey sticking out in this area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to brush the bees away and actually cut off that comb. And that's something you can do, and the bees can get straight in there. They're not really enjoying the bee brush. So what I'll do is I'll add some smoke to that area. Oh, now my smoke has run out. But because this bulging out bit was touching this bit over here, I'm actually going to just cut that away. And that will mean that, that it won't touch, and the bees can just get in there and repair it, which they'll do really quite quickly. And that's better than having comb pressed against comb. Okay, so now we can move that across. Now, someone talked about the smoker running out earlier. It's running out now. We'll get a little more smoke here and top it up.
Doesn't Pete say that when he does it, he rolls up cardboard? He does something with cardboard, doesn't he, Pete, when he's trying to use the smoker?
He will often use cardboard, yes, and roll it up and put it in there. All sorts of things you can use, but if you've got no nice mulch, you could use cardboard. Just bear in mind not to use ones that have a whole pretty picture on them or colours on them, because then you'll be introducing other sort of chemicals into the smoke. Okay, today we're keeping bees on a balcony. We're undercover here because it's been raining, but this is also a nice example of how you can keep bees on a balcony. My sister kept bees on a balcony in Berlin for a number of years, and it's a wonderful thing that people can do. They can get a real amount of produce from a very small area, simply because although the bees only take up a small footprint like this, then they go out and they're harvesting nectar from up to a 10-kilometre or 6-mile radius, which is just incredible to think. You get really good honey in the city as well. People keep bees on their rooftops, on their balconies, in their little backyards, and get amazing honey from all of the things that people plant. Okay, now this smoke has kind of gone out, but if we keep puffing it, it'll probably get going again. Any more questions?
Yeah, look, this comes from the Essential Lady Homeschool. I just have to say that because they're probably at home watching doing school now. And had this fantastic, they were able to transfer a wild swarm into a brood box, and the bees have been in the box for a full month now, but they have not started to build anything. Do you think that means they don't have a queen?
Oh, 4 months in there and they haven't built anything.
4 months, sorry.
Oh, 4 months. No, I haven't built any comb at all.
Yeah.
So you can get in there and have a look and see if there's any brood. If you dial back in this video a little bit, you'll see the difference between brood and honey. And if you can see brood in there, it does mean they have a laying queen. But if you've got a good nectar flow, other hives are doing well, and that hive's just not doing very well and not picking up, then you may need to introduce a new queen. So you take away the old one and introduce a new queen. But if you've got no brood at all, yes, it's possible you don't have a queen at all, in which case you'll have to introduce a queen that you'll buy in from a queen breeder. Okay.
Hobo Gold's asking, Cedar, are there any problems with slugs getting?
I've never heard a problem of slugs in a hive, but let me know if you have. That's a new one to me. Certainly there's all sorts of things in different areas of the world. We don't have it here, but wasps can get into hives. Here that we don't have any wasps that get in and eat bees, but some countries do, but not slugs. Okay, now I think the next frame is actually this one, which is full of honey. There we go. So if we're doing our spring management, we could actually just take this frame away because it's all honey and put in a new one, or just cut it out like we did last week and alleviate some pressure in the brood nest. I'm not going to do that because I haven't filled up the flow frames yet, and I'm really keen for them to get up there and store some honey. So I'm going to let the bees shift it upstairs as they make way for the queen to lay. Okay. I couldn't see any queen cells either, so there's no sort of sign of them wanting to swarm. So we'll leave them with the honey at the moment.
Cedar, if they do swarm, one of the questions is, will half the bees stay with the old queen and the other half leave?
It is about half that leave, and you know, it's not the queen that starts the motion, it is the hive itself. So half the bees will actually kick out the old queen, and then that starts the process of what they call swarming. And usually they will fly and land temporarily on a branch somewhere, and that's an opportune moment for you to get your hive, get your brood box like this, like you've seen us do on live streams. We've got plenty of videos showing you how to catch that swarm, and you can start. In fact, this hive was the swarm we caught on a mango tree. You can have a look at that video. And it's been quite a popular one, catching that swarm, and we've moved it now from where it was in the apiary up here under cover. So yes, half the bees leave. It's a good idea to be prepared in the springtime. You might be lucky to catch a swarm. If you're around other beehives, then the likelihood is quite high that there'll be a swarm you can catch, but you can't catch it unless you're prepared. So be prepared, get your brood box already assembled, get your base already assembled, and we've got all of that online. You can jump on there. If you're new to beekeeping, then the bundle is where to start. So you've got your tools, you've got your bee jacket, and another thing that we have more recently is our caddy, which is a handy toolbox just to keep everything in one place. And you've got a bee brush, hive tools, your logbook here, so you can write down what's happening in each hive and mark in what's happening in your flow frames or your brood inspection here. And it also comes with lots of other little wingdings to help you with your beekeeping, like these queen clips here. If you need to temporarily hold the queen, then this is what's called a queen clip. Okay, so be prepared for the spring ahead. Make sure you have your equipment. If you don't have anything and you really want to catch it, you can use a cardboard box, but you have to get some equipment pretty quickly because they're just going to build a random comb in a cardboard box when you catch a swarm, and then it's a bit of a drama. You need to cut out the brood and then rubber band it into a frame, but still better than losing the swarm altogether. Okay. Great, time for a couple more as we put this hive back together.
So how many hours a week does beekeeping require? Someone's wanting to do a hive, but just wants to know how much work is involved in a beehive.
So it does depend where you are in the world, but they're not as demanding as, say, like chickens, where you have to do something every day and close the gate to feed them or anything like that. You can go away for months at a time and your bees are fine. You come back and they've stored a whole lot of honey ready for you to harvest, which is fantastic. However, you do need to do what we're doing now and do your brood inspections. If you notice there's a problem where the bee numbers are dropping, or you're doing your spring management so that to prevent your hive from swarming, so you'll do an inspection like this in the springtime, or if you're in an area in the world that has varroa, then you'll need to inspect more often to perhaps do your varroa treatments. There's a variety of different methods of controlling those little mites. We don't have them where we are. Hopefully it stays that way. But yeah, it will depend on your local area. Here, that you'll be doing brood inspections like this a couple of times a year at least on all of your hives, to go through, check for pests and disease, make sure your hive's happy and healthy. But as said, it can be more often in other areas of the world, so get some local knowledge as well.
Carol wants to know, should they place an extra frame of honey for the bees to use in early spring? Wondering whether they should put it in the centre of the brood box on the outside edge, or does it really matter?
So it's an extra frame of honey.
Yeah, for the bees. Where should I place an extra frame of honey for the bees to use in early spring?
Okay, put it on the edge of the hive. So keep your brood nest together if it's still cold, and put the extra frame if you happen to have one. Some beekeepers will freeze a frame of honey in case they need it to feed back to the bees, and you can put it on the edge of the hive here, because that's the way bees normally do it. They use it as a thermal mass, so they have the honey on the edge and the brood in the middle, keeping warm.
Big Dog is asking, do bees swarm in other months apart other than spring?
They can do, so you can get late swarms in summer and autumn, but it's unusual. Normally it's the springtime when there's lots of flowers. Okay, we're moving this frame across now, and because we've changed the order, we need to check again that we're not going to get honey pressing up against honey. You can see this bulging there. So as we pull these together, just want to make sure there's enough room for bees to get through and look after that comb and stop hive beetles from laying in it. So see how we've got, it's starting to get, it's fine down here, but it's starting to get a bit squeezy in this area here. You can see that. So I just need to get one bee out of the way here. There we go. And I can put that across. So I'm just checking there is enough room. They only need room to get through in order to manage the area. So that's still okay. And we're going across. And we've got another frame here to go in. And then the one we're wanting to cycle out, we're putting right on the edge. It's a good thing to do. Frames have been used for brood for a few seasons. They get old and dark. You want to start cycling them out of your hive. There we go. That one's all honey. You can see it glistening down the cells. And note the cell size as well. Here we have cell sizes, because they're away from the brood nest, they've created sizes, and this is a naturally drawn comb as well, that are quite big, about 6 millimeters. I did a lot of measuring of comb while we were making the flow hive, working out what size they should be, and I went for this size, about 6 millimeters across, because that's the size they make when they're using it for honey only. So you notice the flow frames are about that big, and that the worker cells, you can see down here, that's closer to a 5 millimeter cell, usually about 5.3 millimeters, and that's the worker size cell. Doesn't look like much, but it means a lot to the bees. Okay, the bees are getting a little agitated here. I'm going to add some more smoke. I don't blame them. It's a grey, rainy day. We've pulled their hive apart. They're really wanting it back together. So let's get it back together. We'll answer a couple of last questions.
Great, Stephen. What makes honey crystallise?
Okay, honey crystallizes. All honey will crystallize eventually when it crystallizes, unless it's been pasteurized, which is where they heat it for that effect, but that destroys a lot of the medicinal properties of the honey, so best not to do that. So it crystallizes depending on the ratios of fructose and glucose in the honey or in the nectar that the bees are collecting. So the paperbark here, for instance, crystallizes quite quickly. We harvested some recently, and it's already starting to go candied in the jar. Sometimes you'll even find it starting to go candied in the hive on the colder frames on the edge. Whereas when you get there's other types that almost never goes candied, and it just really depends on the flower source the bees are using to create that honey. Crystallized honey isn't a problem. Some people aren't used to it because they pasteurize honey in the supermarket and they need to be educated. I've heard of people throwing out honey because it's gone candied in the jar, but really it's a delicacy candied and just changes the texture. My children love the what they call the crispy honey, and where Trace is from in New Zealand, almost all beekeepers are purposefully trying to get a nice fine candy in their honey. So they'll actually add tiny little sugar crystals from another fine candy into their honey to set it off and start that candying process, and it'll follow the same crystal structure and end up a nice smooth candy. If you've got a really coarse candied honey that's like big sugar crystal lumps and it's not that pleasant to eat, one fun thing you can do is throw it in the blender, and what that'll do is smash all the crystals into nice fine ones and make a creamed honey, which is another a beautiful thing to enjoy. And that will need to keep in the fridge or it tends to separate. So if you have a go at that, keep your creamed honey in the fridge. Okay.
So a couple of people saying, have you spotted the queen at all?
I didn't. I was too busy yapping and I didn't do a good job of looking through all the frames. But that's okay. Lots of brood. I know she's here. I don't necessarily need to find her, but it's a fun thing to practice, is queen spotting. Okay. And goes across. Now we've got one last frame to go in, which is the one we're putting on the edge to cycle out. So it's got a bit of brood on it. We're going to leave it there till it doesn't have any more brood, and then we can remove it. Okay. That's that one, and that's the reason we want to remove it, is that comb guard slipped out. We didn't do a good job of putting that in. Should have used little nails or some glue to hold that in place.
So will the queen stop laying brood if there's a drop in the temperature through?
Yes. So in extreme cold areas, the queen will actually stop laying altogether. And that's on purpose, because if there's no stores coming in, then there's nothing to feed the little hungry mouths of the larvae, and your colony will be in trouble. Now I haven't got quite enough room to drop this frame in, so I'm going to need to pull that out again and lever the frames across a little bit like this, just by going on the edge of the box. I thought I had enough room, but not quite. There is a generous amount of space in our flow hives, which you'll really appreciate later at times like this, when you do need a bit more space to drop your frames in. Okay. Now, same thing again, just checking for where comb might touch somewhere. We are getting a little bit squeezy against the wall of the hive. So when you're moving frames around, just be mindful not to have comb touching comb. I'm going to try it this way. Looks a bit better. And the bees can service that just. There's a little area here just sticking out too far. I'm just going to chop that off like this, and that will, the bees will be able to fix that up quite quickly, but it's better than having it touching the wall of the hive. They'll get in there and fix that up really quite quickly. Okay. There we go. You can hear the tone of the bees change again. Let's add a bit more smoke, calm them down as we put this hive back together. Thanks for all of your great questions. It's amazing to hear all of your questions. And if you've got answers to other people's questions, chime in. It's always great to see people helping each other. Okay. Listen to them go. Beautiful. I'm going to get my bee brush and actually move this across like that. Keep your space on either side. So if you've got excess space in your brood box and you want it on the edges, and that way you've got the correct comb spacing, especially important when the bees are drawing their natural comb. Look at that, piles of bees in this hive. This hive's going to absolutely explode in the coming weeks, and we should see a lot of honey being stored in these frames. So now what we're going to have to do, because we've got so many bees, is use a lot of smoke in our bee brush and seize the opportune moment when there's not many bees around the edge to put our excluder back on and our super back on. So to do that, you can use some smoke. You can brush them in like this, just by lifting the bees up like that. We've got our shelf bracket there. You can take off later. And the idea is you want the bees in the box and down low, so that they're not around this lip and not getting in the way when the boxes come back together. You can just brush them all in. If you've got another hand, you can get somebody else to just help brush as you put your bee box on top. But look, the smoke's working wonderfully and really moving a lot of those bees away. And it's handy to have this bee brush here that comes with our caddy kit. And then we just need to chuck the excluder, which is down here, right on top, like that. And I'm still keeping the smoke up because I don't want those bees just coming back up as we're trying to put the super back on. And also a little bit of smoke over here. So as the population increases, it gets a little bit more tricky to do your brood inspections. So it's nice. A nice way to start is start small, build up your confidence, and as the population increases, so will your confidence. Okay. So that's a pretty good moment now. We've got not many bees on the surfaces, and we'll just try and drop that super right on top. Okay. Just like that. Do your best to line it up. And if it's not quite in line like that, what you'll need to do is just grab the front and pull it. And the same on the other side. So it's nicely lined up with the box below. There we go. Thanks to the bees for being so well behaved. And all we've got to do now is brush these bees off and put our roof on and our covers on. Any last question?
No, everyone's loving these brood inspections, Peter, and obviously we've got people in the other hemisphere who are starting to prepare their boxes not to freeze up for winter. I'm wondering if you've given any tips on those.
Yes, so preparing for winter is an important thing in those colder areas. We don't really get a winter here. If you want to see some preparing for winter videos, have a look at the beekeeper.org. We've got some great episodes on there by experts from areas that get a lot of deep snow and things like that. We're not experts on wintering bees here because we don't really get a winter as far as the bees are concerned. But the beekeeper.org is a great online course that's made to take you from square one right through to even a deep scientific knowledge in beekeeping. Gets rave reviews, also a fundraiser. We've planted 1.5 million trees so far, and the idea is we create literally billions of safe blossoms for our bees to forage on, but also all of the other native bees and all of the other species that desperately need habitat. As David Attenborough says, to be sustainable on this planet, we need to rewild our world. So that's what the beekeeper.org is about. It's about educating, helping you get started, and also raising funds to rewild our world. Thanks for tuning in. Let us know what you'd like us to cover. Same time next week.